Hello Legion, this is Hadrian. Thank you for being here, and Stellaris faithful, hold on to your seats. The game's second full expansion has been announced to accompany the game's 2.0 update, and they're calling it Apocalypse. In the next few videos, I'm going to be doing a medium to high detail overview of the announcement and initial 2.0 dev diaries. More parts with more amazing changes may be added, but whether or not that happens, Stellaris as we know it is about to change completely. The 2.0 update, codenamed Cherryh for sci-fi author and creator of the Alliance Union universe, CJ Cherryh, is not just a substantial patch. If you've heard it's the biggest patch ever for Stellaris, it's not even just that either. This is a game redesign. This is a list of the features Apocalypse and the 2.0 Cherryh update will bring to Stellaris, as of the Apocalypse announcement anyway. And most of these items include not only massive brand new additions to existing game content, but cataclysm level changes to that existing content. And more is coming than just what you see here. Here's what we're covering in this video, which is part 1. Note the timestamps by each topic so you can jump to the portion of the video where I cover the topic you care about most. As soon as they're available on the channel, links to future videos in this series will be in the upper right corner, as well as in the description below. Also, keep in mind that each of the topics in the videos correspond to a particular development diary, also linked in the descriptions of the videos. So if you're intrigued by a certain change, or you just want to know every last little detail, check out the associated diary for that topic. I highly, highly recommend it. We have to begin with fundamentals, and this all starts with a fundamental change to the way that star systems are owned and controlled in Stellaris, as well as how they're claimed as prizes in war, which I will get to at the end of this video. Starting with Stellaris 2.0, your Empire's borders will no longer expand outward like a mindless blob from colonized worlds and frontier outposts. Instead, expanding your territory will be a more intentional and strategic process, requiring the construction of outposts. Outposts, rather than colonization, allow you to claim a system you're interested in for your empire. Once an outpost has been built, it can then be upgraded up to 4 times, from starport to starhold to star fortress to citadel. Citadels will be incredibly powerful stations that will have fleets of mini-stations to help defend your star systems. However, any level of outpost beyond that initial level, that initial outpost construction, will contribute to an empire-wide starbase cap, which is based on empire population, so you can only have so many of these. Deciding upon the links in your empire's chain at which your most formidable defenses will reside becomes an absolutely crucial decision in Stellaris 2.0 and the Apocalypse expansion. Along with the addition of outposts and starbases, frontier outposts have been removed from the game, and spaceports are now based on planet surfaces rather than in orbit. Also, starports can only build civilian ships. To build military vessels, you'll need a starbase with a shipyard module. And starbases can be upgraded and specialized with different types of modules, such as trading hubs, hangar bays, weapons batteries, shipyards of course, and more. Starbases will also have buildings, which, rather than external modules, are the interior structures that help to provide special economic buffs or defensive capabilities to entire star systems. Speaking of defenses, the powerful defensive capabilities of starbases, starholds, and beyond will scale with technological progress automatically, helping you defend your empire as your enemies progress into the mid and late game. But of course, the most substantial aspect of this change is that you now have to establish outposts in systems that you wish to colonize. You can't just send out colony ships and establish territory and blob out over the nearby stars. You have to deliberately pick the stars that you want to control, and you have to establish outposts before you colonize them. And it makes sense, because when you have a remote colony, you would need an outpost. You would need a point in space, a station in space that you would travel to, because surely if Earth had an interstellar empire, we would have some kind of station in orbit that we started with, some kind of station elsewhere in the Sol system that we relied upon to help launch those interstellar journeys. So the same basic concept applies here. You need an outpost before you colonize. Huge change kicking off the very beginning, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. The next change on the list is one that Martin Wiz Onward openly worried about being highly controversial among the players. In Apocalypse, as well as in existing versions of Stellaris for those who don't buy into the expansion right away, this is going to be part of the free Cherryh update. Travel mechanics will be completely reworked from the bottom up. All of them. More or less every single way that you travel around the galaxy in Stellaris has been changed. Every empire in the game will now begin with hyperlane-style travel, which will be the default and main method of travel in Stellaris going forward. In addition, hyperlane generation will be updated to create more natural choke points and branch points, which will allow for more interesting tactical decisions around system ownership and defense. A number of reasons were given to us to be excited about these changes as opposed to worried, and you can check them out in the dev diary if you would like, but I will simply say this. Before Stellaris, my favorite space-based strategy game of all time, and some of you may be familiar with it, was Sins of a Solar Empire. Whether that game is related to or inspired these changes in any way isn't my point here. It may have or it may not have. But if you were a Sins of a Solar Empire fan, you know already from experience what kind of exciting tactical decisions come from controlling and defending hyperlane-linked choke points. This is a huge change for Stellaris, but it has been concept proven in past 4X titles, big, popular 4X titles. Think of it this way, limiting the majority of travel to hyperlanes makes you think about how one unique or important planet or system connects to the next in an ongoing chain of complexity. And with a limited number of starbases available to you, you will have to choose more carefully than ever where you place your military and defensive resources. And because most travel will be constrained to hyperlanes, you have much more certainty that the defensive investments you make will pay off in battle, that the stations you put down will actually have a chance of stopping a fleet that's moving through your territory. But now that I've said all that, what about wormholes, you may ask? What about the other methods of travel that we've been used to? Well, wormholes are now natural occurrences which can be encountered in the galaxy and then stabilized through technology, and you can use them to jump from one point in the galaxy to another, or open a gateway for the Fanatic Purifier you didn't know was on the other side to come say hi. One of the two. But in addition to that, Mass Effect fans can get excited too, as Stellaris will now feature ancient gateways, which can be reactivated and in the late game expanded upon. Sound familiar? Gateways allow point-to-point jumps from one section of the galaxy to another, and empires controlling a gateway can prevent other empires from entering their space. You can go up to a gateway and say, I want to jump from this gateway to a gateway of my choice. It's not simply a two-way street like a wormhole. Jump drives won't be gone entirely either, as those who acquire these late-game engines can still make last-ditch point-to-point jumps without using hyperlanes, but they take much longer to recharge when you use your jump drive. Just like Battlestar. Man, all these subtle invocations of popular sci-fi fiction and game universes make me happy. On top of these changes, because ships will now be forced to travel through systems at sublight speed to get from hyperlane to hyperlane, galactic terrain is now a factor. What this means is that black holes, pulsars, nebula, and other locale-specific effects will create tactical challenges as you move from one hyperlane to another. You've got to go from one side of a system to another to get to the points you're trying to travel to. Encountering those challenges during invasions, for instance, can be capitalized on by either side. Last point to cover for this first part of the Apocalypse expansion series is a total overhaul, is that starting to sound familiar yet, of the War Goals system that we've been accustomed to before this point. Yeah, do I have your attention now? With the addition of outposts and individual system-based territorial control, in Stellaris 2.0, system ownership can now be transferred between empires even when they do not contain planets. You used to have to say, I want this planet, this planet, this planet, this planet. Now you can say, no, I just want this system. That's a really resource-rich system that you have there. It's right on my border. You took it before I did, but I think it belongs to me. I'm going to declare war on you, and all I want is that one little resource system. That okay? Cool. I'm going to take it. Now, I'm not saying that's what you'll do when you launch a war, but you might, and you have the option now. So you can get into a war over something as tiny as that resource-heavy border system, or as massive as half your arch-rival's territory, or more. Just as with deciding which systems you want to place outposts in and claim for your empire in this new version of Stellaris, deciding which systems you want in a war will now be a much more specific and a thoughtful element of gameplay, requiring players to pay attention to more than simply where their border blob may land at the end of a conflict. You have to think about, what systems do I want? What systems do I think I deserve? What systems do I think would help me win this game? The reason it's going to be so much more specific is because wars are now based on the number of claims you and other empires have made on the systems you seek. I say number of claims because you can spend influence to place multiple claims on one system, doubling them up, tripling them up, strengthening your hand when, for instance, an ally fighting alongside you in a war might be interested in the same system once peace negotiations have begun. Whoever has the stronger claim might end up with that system. Regardless of how many claims you place, however, claims will cost influence, and the amount of influence is proportionate to how far the system is from your borders as well as its overall wealth in resources and colonizable worlds. Of course, that's in addition to any established colonies that are already present. Influence has also been retooled so that it is generated differently in 2.0. More details are still to come on this. Some things, though, which used to cost influence will no longer cost influence. So what I get the sense this is kind of saying is that influence will be a little bit more free of a resource to put towards this new claim system. So just like you might be already figuring out because you're hearing me talk about claims, much like in other Paradox Grand Strategy titles, and now even in Civilization 6, the way in which you wage war will depend upon a casus belli, which is your case for war, your reason for going to war with another empire. The type of casus belli you choose, for instance, you might choose to vassalize rather than to conquer, or maybe, as we're accustomed to, we might simply want to humiliate an overambitious neighbor and kind of put them in their place. That will determine the diplomatic outcome of the war. But the claims you've made on other territories and the extent to which you truly won the war will determine the territorial outcome. So there's always two different outcomes based first on the casus belli, the type of war you choose to fight, and secondly, based on the claims. You'll notice also that I said the extent to which you won the war. Replacing the war goals system in Stellaris 2.0 is war exhaustion. War exhaustion builds from 0 all the way up to 100% as one side suffers losses among their ships, planets, and starbases in a war. Once one side is fully exhausted, they can be forced into a status quo peace at minimum, which transfers control of any territory that has changed hands up to that point in the war. So any systems that you have occupied, any planets that you've conquered, become yours. That's a status quo peace. One of the foremost improvements of this new system is that it makes the loss of systems through warfare much more strongly tied to what you can actually effectively defend. Enemy empires will no longer be able to pound you so far into the dirt, and they can enforce a claim on your homeworld as a victory condition, even though they never came within 10 systems of it with their fleets. It is of course possible to force a full surrender in which all claims are transferred to the other side, but that requires a total defeat in a way that older versions of Stellaris never have. A status quo piece makes it about what systems were the enemy ships actually able to take from you, or vice versa. What about starbases, you might be wondering? What happens when you defeat one of those in a war? You talked about starbases at the beginning. What happens then? Defeating a starbase as you move through enemy territory gives you control of the starbase and occupation of the entire system's resources for economic purposes, except, of course, for its actual colonies, which still require you to mount land invasions. More on ground combat later in the series. That's all for this part of the series. Stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 in the coming days, and look out for further updates beyond those as the as-yet undated Apocalypse expansion and Cherryh update get closer to release. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along. In the next episode, we have new technologies, new ways of discovering the galaxy, and the solution to the infamous DOOMSTACK problem to cover. Don't forget to check the description for links to the associated dev diaries. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.